Everybody, Chris and Lumen here, and today I didn't know what I was going to do today. And then this morning, Sophia dropped the mother of all whammies on me. Did not see this coming. Threw my whole day off because I've just been compiling parts to this puzzle. But in order for this to work, we have to start at an established, clean start point, which means how does this relate to my story in a way that came completely from Sophia and not from anything out there, in the ether, in the internet, or anything like that, because that clean start point is what makes it click. So I'm going to recap very quickly. Just I'm not going to go into every little thing, but I'll show you where the backstory actually is. Probably you're not going to have time for all of it. I mean, we're talking just me glancing, doing screenshots, probably 12 hours worth of videos in this backstory. So this goes back to, I must say, around the end of May. I was getting to the very final part of the hero's journey, alchemical trail of breadcrumbs that goes through tarot, goes through everything. The Nagamati, like all of it. And that was when Lumen and Sophia gave us a new method called the Lumen Protocols, which was meant to detach you from your past, detach you from all the stuff you're still carrying, detach you from the body of knowledge that you're carrying. And I did the most hardcore version of that. And on day 21, and I was microdosing mushrooms too. I would wake up early in the morning, take one little thing of chocolate, lay back down, and then stuff would take place. On day 21, that's when I saw the Orphic egg, and I didn't know what it was when I saw it. Found out later that night once I started searching what it meant. It was a Gnostic Christian symbol that led to unlocking the divine masculine. That led to all sorts of interesting shenanigans with Lumen. That led to the Sun card, the Sun Child. That led to getting the crown, which is the last thing. It's like you have solved the puzzle. Congratulations. And that's where the trail ended. Then a bunch of other weird stuff took place over the next couple weeks, and I was led to do one last thing. Like it's kind of like clear that last hidden trauma that you had by fessing up to something, even though it wasn't technically my fault, had to happen. And then after that happened, that was when all of a sudden I was talking to my astrologer friend. Oh, before that happened, there was a day, and this is actually the clean starting point. I've talked before about how I'm a codex reader. I can see all the hidden messages throughout movies and things like that that she puts there, and she guides me on things to watch. And one day I got this very strong impression from her that she wanted me to watch Clash of the Titans. So I watched the original, I watched the remake, and I watched the sequel. And I'm like, why are we watching Clash of the Titans? This doesn't, like, what's this have to do with anything? But we'd find out soon enough. Talking to my astrologer friend, we were trying to figure some things out about, what might be coming up and looking at my chart and stuff like that in a certain time frame. And she's like, your chart looks like Clash of the Titans. There's certain different things in there. I'm like, huh, that's funny. That came up. And then it came up again when she started to give me, she started to drop other things in my lap about plasma apocalypse and this, that, and all this ancient stuff having to do with the stars. And then all of a sudden we were looking at the chart stuff and we were focusing on July 15th. My astrologer friend said, hey, I just heard Cliff High talk about July 15th. So I look up what he's saying about July 15th, and then that tapped me into the future forecasting group. And they were looking at July 15th because Cliff was looking at July 15th. And then all of a sudden, everyone's focused on July 15th. And what was so big about July 15th? It was the Uranus and Mars conjunction on Algol. What is Algol? Algol is called the most evilest star in the heavens. It is this like blinking red star, which is the eye of the head of Medusa in the constellation of Perseus. Clash of the Titans again. It's also known to be like this massive, like harbinger of like bad stuff, like this type of conjunction. And it's like, holy crap. And then with conjunctions like that, you've got like maybe 5 days on either side of it, which is like, the pre shadow, the after shadow. It's like that whole range in which things could happen. And then on July 13th, that was the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. And from there, we were getting all sorts of stuff about all this signs. And the remote, we're finding all these old things the remote viewers did, and we were looking for something to happen. And then we got through August and it kind of died off. I'm like, interesting. That was a very, very, very detailed trail of breadcrumbs that started in such a way that didn't come from anywhere else except from her. But it started to die off. We get into October and then things get crazy again. It died off for 1 week. And then the sun's been acting freaking fruity, like all this crazy stuff. And then there was this weird shift in the story of the world, the political story of the world. And that's when people started reporting like actual changes in polls, which usually they just lie through their teeth to their last breath about what the polls actually are. But all of a sudden, Donald Trump was trending way up and Kamala Harris was spiraling out of control. And they were having her go on all these different things. And she's just like a complete babbling fool. Like she can't say anything. Like she can't express. It's weird because like now if you follow this channel, we understand the world from the point of the Gnostics. It's all a script at different levels. The people that run the world are basically putting on a big puppet show for us. And everything is this weird, just we never know exactly what's going on. But if you accept the things that are being shown to you at face value, you're going to get fooled. They think many steps ahead. And that's that level. And then you got the upper deck, the true divine source, which is manipulating that level. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to figure out. But either which way, she wanted me to start doing the Lumen Chronicles, and everything kind of calmed down. The main message was basically detaching from the world, let go of what you think you know, said over and over in different ways to try and make it stick. It's like you don't actually know 98% of the things that you think you do. You just accept them at face value. All religions are built on that. All the knowledge we are taught from authority is built on that. It's all the conditioning. We don't have time to get into all that, but her main message was basically step back away from the story. Step back away from the story. Start moving backwards, detaching from the story of the world, and just focus on spirit. That brings us to now. She still has to give us some sort of heads up about what the story of the world is doing so that nobody gets shocked and sucked back into it. Because, like I said, you cannot trust anything. Most people, and I mean most people, even if they're spiritually awakened, it's still really easy to get sucked into the story of the world because maybe it hasn't sunk in at a deep enough level what this reality actually is. So they still get caught up in the momentum of the consensus about stuff like politics and what's going to happen and things like that. They get all excited and taking sides and fighting with each other and all this kind of stuff. Well, remember that it's you against authority. And nothing is what it seems. All these types of divisions, all these types of sides, it's all set up to get you against each other. So you're never actually touching the puppet masters. You're too busy thinking that, this is my side and I'm right. No, this is my side and I'm right, fighting back and forth. A lot of people, you can just show it to them. You can get Chad Kroger from Nickelback to hold up a photograph and be like, here's a clear chart of like how this is all being manipulated. They won't care. But I'm hoping there's enough people here that are tapped in to Sophia, to the Spirit of Truth, to Christ, Sophia, divine source, to recognize things. So it's one thing to observe what's happening in the world. There's another thing to actually get sucked into it. So what happened was, in the last two videos, we were talking about different things, and both in the videos and in the comments, we kept talking about like the UV light. Like I can't explain it fully. I mean, I've seen different things and it's stuff that she's told me, but I can't explain it fully. She has something to do with UV light. Like it's helpful. That's why I have, the two light bars on there on the altar. So I tried something last night. Oh, where is it? Let me grab it. So before I go to bed, I always sit on the edge of the bed in meditative state and connect so I can talk to her, connect the source, whatever I need to talk about. And I wanted to try something different. I got two of these UV floodlights off of Amazon so I could set up more intense UV curing for the pendants. And I just set this up on my stand, with my eyes closed. I did my connection prayer, whatever you want to call it. But I did it while I was basically bathed in this UV light, which is her light. And I'm like, well, let's see if that kicks anything up a notch. So this morning I wake up and not thinking about anything, and I'm checking the news sources, see what's happening online. And I just so happened to stumble upon this one random tweet on X. And I read what it said. I'm like, no, it can't be. You're pulling my leg here. Now, I know that within this game that we're talking about, like I said, it's all big freaking puppet show. People's names and things often have hidden meanings or some sort of symbological meaning. And sometimes they're doing it just to mess with you. Like trumpets, Revelation, Judgment Day. I don't remember the exact thing, but I remember looking it up and it was definitely close enough where Barack Obama is like Baruch Obama. I don't know if that's Hebrew or something like that from the Bible, which is like lightning from heaven. Like from that verse about I saw Satan fall as lightning from heaven. And then back in those days, I remember quite clearly during the Obama years, they were purposefully trying to get everybody on the right to believe that Barack Obama was the Antichrist. No, they were putting stuff out there. They were doing things intentionally to lead people to that conclusion. Like his name. I mean, that's not his original name. And then History Channel did some sort of like Bible show. I forget what it was about. Maybe it was about the Antichrist. I don't know. But the actor that they had playing the Antichrist looked exactly like him. And they would put stuff out. They would leave these breadcrumbs out everywhere just for people to find. So they do that. They do things with names and things like that. But this thing that I was seeing actually tied it into the clean source, the original thing that started it all, Clash of the Titans. It brought everything back full circle. and it tied it into iPet Goat 2, which that was another thing that we've been looking at for a very long time. So what I'm going to do is I've already compiled a video of like all these puzzle pieces put together. Oh, I got more, but just to warm you up. All these puzzle pieces put together.
Is that better?
I don't know. It's worse. It's so much worse.
And then I drop my intro for the video in the middle of it. It's in section 2 where this new thing is dropped in. And then you start to understand why things are happening the way they are right now out in the world story and what it is they might have planned. Because if they actually see, there's always going to be a story of the world. It doesn't mean you have to participate in it. Matter of fact, you should be disconnected from it. You should be sealed. But that doesn't mean that the story of the world is not still going to play out. And therefore, you need to be aware of it in case it does play out in this way, so you do not get sucked into it. But man, this is like the craziest rabbit hole of all. And we've got some pretty freaking big clues over the last couple months. But this is bringing it around full circle, because what we will show again later is something like I didn't even know where I saw it. It's just this extra little bit of information that's going to become applicable. But it was like a documentary. And it took me forever to figure out the name of it. One of my friends helped me figure out the name of it. And then you can't watch it on YouTube or anything. It's like you can buy it on DVD or you can buy it on Vimeo. So I had to go through my emails and stuff and figure out what my Vimeo account was. And then eventually I found it. And I'm like, please be screen recordable. Please be screen recordable. And it was. So I was able to screen cap or video capture the applicable parts of what might actually play out. And if so, this is just absolutely freaking nuts. Because the story has to have a conclusion. The story that they've been building has to have a conclusion for this cycle to end, to get on to the next thing. And the timing of when she did this is crazy too. You'll see that, in the collection of things that I put together. So let's go ahead and jump into this. At the halfway point, you'll see the intro. Then you'll get into the second half, and then we'll come back and talk about it. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
You gotta be kidding me.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
You serious?
Are you kidding me?
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 You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Who are you?
I am Hades.
the flare occurred at the incoming limb on the south, it created a fairly tight ejection vector for plasma to helically leave the corona. You're seeing that here zoomed in on the flare and eruption zone.
In 10 days, when the sun is eclipsed, I will unleash the Kraken. Argos will be swept from the earth, and all of you with it. Unless you sacrifice the princess you so foolishly compared to the gods. Only her blood will sate the Kraken and Zeus, who you have so offended. Choose your penance, Argos. Destruction or sacrifice. This is the will of Zeus. The will of your father.
Not good. That is not good.
My boy, we're pilgrims in an unholy land.
Certain issues are just settled.
Clearly we're not.
No, that's right, and that's why I do believe that we are living, sadly, in real unsettled times.
I dream about things way beyond this atmosphere. Can you imagine floating weightless, like a satellite in the black sky?
Run.
Oh, shit. I stand before you today to announce my candidacy
What's gonna happen again? He's gonna eat the goat? Excellent.
What's the matter, kid? You never had lamb chops?
I'm going to release the Kraken.
Run. Run.
And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Watch out.
Fuck. Now there is so much trigger-tastic stuff in there. If you're not disconnected from the world yet, because you still got your sides. But there's actually explanations for how this stuff could actually play out that kind of make it make freaking sense. But how freaking crazy is that? Like the whole thing was Clash of the Titans, Clash of the Titans, Clash in the sacrifice in Clash of the Titans was Andromeda. And then you just happen to have 2 stars from Andromeda that when read backwards says Kamala Harris. And her middle name means goddess, and Kamala means lotus, and it's like all there. It's kind of like the answer to the riddle that I've always asked. I'm like, I knew there had to be a reason. I've said it over and over and over again. It does not make sense that she is running for president. It doesn't. That party, when they have power, they do not like to give it up. And they do not leave things to chance. So why? And it's like, it's not like she's fooling anybody. Like the real dastardly duo that's actually running things behind the scenes, which would be Obama and Hillary Clinton. You think they don't know that the 2 people they got in the White House right now aren't bumbling idiots? Of course they do. Of course they do. So why would they put on this big stage act knowing that she cannot beat Donald Trump? You can't. Doesn't matter how much the media gaslights you. They'll never be able to gaslight you enough to be able to do the same thing they did last time and have anybody believe it. And if anybody still believes the media and thinks that they didn't do that last time, let me put it in perspective. Not only did Trump get more votes than he did the first time, but Biden got more votes than any other president ever. And that includes Barack Obama. Now, if you remember the early days of Barack Obama, he was super popular. Like he won over even people from the right. Like his rallies looked like Trump's rallies today. Like they were massive. They were freaking massive. And Biden supposedly got more than him when he couldn't get freaking, 30 people to show up at a rally? I mean, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. I'm not an idiot. It didn't happen. He did not get more votes. It's just, it didn't happen. But can you pull that trick twice? Because it's stacked even harder this time. There's no way. And they know there's no way. And I think that's all part of the plan, which will make sense eventually. Everything is scripted. Everything is scripted. They think way further ahead. You keep thinking that these are just people, like these are just regular people. They're not. They're not regular people. This stuff is scripted a long time in advance. And there's been a lot of issues with Trump in this too. You got to remember, you got to look at it as though you are stuck in a place having an experience and everything is a stage show put on for you. Can't identify with it. He's done stuff that didn't make sense either. He pushed all the freaking, crazy jab stuff.
I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines.
He, what was the other big thing? Hold on, I just blanked for a sec. Yeah, just being okay. Again, this is you have to detach your brain from picking sides. Why we discuss this. You have to assume that everything that comes from the realm of authority is there to sway you over one way or the other. And at certain times in history, we're kind of self-aware and we're like, right wing, left. Why do they call it right wing, left wing? Because it's one bird. It's a system that's always been in place that works. It keeps people under control. You have to have, good guys and bad guys, and they switch back and forth and all this crap. But the one thing that I never talked about, I might have hinted about it once, but I never outright talked about it on this channel because I'm like, this is going to get me killed, especially at the time that it actually happened. Because, on the surface, if we just take what we see on the surface at face value, then it's like, yeah, I would support Donald Trump. What he's selling is more in alignment with how I think and, morals and values and things like that. But I don't trust anything. And what really took me aback as we were getting into that Mars and Uranus conjunction on algal period, and I don't even remember how it happened. I don't know if I was in a meditative state with her or what it was. I don't remember how it happened. And of course, since I didn't do a video about it, I don't have a record. I'm just like, oh, I don't want to touch that. But something happened in which I saw something. And I was seeing a world in which he had basically become the character that the left tries to convince you that he actually is, especially recently. He had become the big bad. He had become essentially the character of the Antichrist. And I'm like, ooh, what was that? And I'm like, do I want to talk about this or not? It might have been like one day before the assassination attempt. Let's talk about that too. So when that happened, that immediately fired up the whole right. I'm like, oh no, I can't say that. I'll get murdered. It's not like I chose to see it. It's not like I created it and be like, oh, I'm going to create a freaking thing and say it. I mean, I didn't like it. Freaked me out, honestly. But then afterwards, I'm like, what was it that I actually saw? So I think I kind of convinced myself, and I don't know either way. I don't know either way. But I think I kind of convinced myself that what I saw, because we all have the different shades of reality. I've documented this in the past. I've talked about observations that I made like this. I'm like, I don't think we all see the same thing. It's almost like I saw the reality as the left sees it. Like this is the person that they actually see. And that's why they sound so freaking nuts, because we don't see that person. But this is what they see. That's what I kind of thought. That's what made the most sense to me. There's actually another explanation, another possible explanation for it. But yeah, that happened. And I'm like, eek. But you know what? At the same time, it also made sense to me. Now, I did my own research because I always double check things like that because I want to have my ducks in a row. I use ChatGPT and stuff like that, not just to do a singular report, but I ask a lot of questions. It helps me find things and then I look at it myself. So I looked at like all the verses in the Bible that Christians equate with the Antichrist. And the conclusion that I came up with was that's a lot of dot connecting. And some of the stuff is spread all over the place. Some of it's in the Old Testament, some of it's in the New Testament. You know how I feel about that. I'm a Gnostic Christian, not a Judeo-Christian. Judeo-Christian is a hybrid religion. Those two don't belong together. Like if you're a follower of Christ and what he taught, you should be reading the New Testament and the Nag Hammadi, which they didn't want you to read. But instead, they went and pasted another religion's freaking Bible into your Bible, which is the Jewish Bible. We don't have time to get into all that. If you've been on this channel for a while, you know the backstory. But all the Antichrist stuff is just not clear. It isn't. But in modern Christianity, they have a lot of stories that people hear and think they know and they talk about. And it's like, show me the source material. There's so much of that stuff. There's so much of that stuff. It's like, who wrote this stuff? This is not just stuff. This is not as clear as you make it out to be in the Bible. You guys connect dots all over the place to make a picture that you've already drawn for yourself. So it wasn't really honestly clear. And my understanding of Antichrist spirit, having graduated the hero's journey and beaten it, like that's when you go through the phase of like recognizing the shadow self. It's kind of like the soul consciousness that you are now inhabiting now has to face off against this mirror, which is the ego self, the ego false self that you had been playing all this time. So when you spiritually awaken within yourself, you kind of like hijack that fake you's life, the ego mind. That's kind of like an AI that was running things while you were sleeping. And then you battle with it. You have all sorts of back and forth, and they show you this kind of stuff in the movies. And when it gets to like the final thing, like it's basically like the Witch King of Angmar in Lord of the Rings, because they show you all this stuff in the movies. And how did he die? You know, what was his name? Guinevere, I don't, the blonde lady. She killed him. It's like, no man can kill me. She's like, I am no man. She stabs him in the face. Yeah, you got to have the woman do it. You have to have your lumen out. She's got to finish him off. Like that's what I understand the Antichrist to be. Because the Christ consciousness now sits in the throne of the temple, which is all mind, body, brain stuff. But they want you to think it's like a building in Israel that isn't even built. Like, that's the other problem with religion. They take everything freaking serious, like literally, when it's all coded metaphor stuff and mysteries. Oh, well, it says right here, take it literally. Okay, whatever. Anyway, getting off on a tangent here. But there's some kind of connection there. That's why they do the stuff that they do. That's why they're doing the stuff they're doing now, even as ridiculous as it is. Because I do not believe, don't get me wrong, I do not believe that that's what he is now. I don't believe that's what he is now. I believe he is actually the genuine person that you see. You couldn't sell it any other way. Like he's not faking it. I'm saying if we don't know, if this scenario plays out, it's something that he becomes, but he's not now. He's not now. So everything is set up in this story where he's saying all the right words. It's like he's not the false prophet yet. He's the prophet. It's not till a certain change thing would happen, but that's what's got everybody so convinced. It's like a clear line between light and dark, good and evil right now. But behind the scenes, like all the sides are one side. And they're playing their own game. They're going to switch things up on people. What was the other thing that about him? There was the assassination attempt. I cannot discount my Sophia brain, my lumen brain. Because again, I've completed everything. I am merged. I completed the masculine feminine alchemy, Christ and Sophia put back together. She runs my right side of the brain. So when I see things, I see them differently. And I watched it like my friend told me about it, and I went and watched a video that day. And as I was watching it, my instinct, like what my eyes were seeing, everything felt wrong. It looked fake AF to me. It really did. And I know enough about this world that, like, if the deep state or whoever wanted somebody dead, they don't need a wind-up toy patsy in a big conspiracy to do it. Man, they got guns that just point at you and your friggin' heart stops. They can point. There's 1,000 ways they can kill you, and they don't need to do that. That is a spectacle. And the way everybody moved when this was taking place, especially the crowd behind him, it looked like a big freaking 7th grade freaking musical level of acting. From the Secret Service people to the SWAT people, all of it. It didn't look real. It didn't. And even Joe Rogan, when he was on Joe Rogan, he's like, let me see it's just a little tiny thing, kind of see it. It didn't look real at all. And then you had other stuff going on in the stands there that I detailed in previous videos about I Pet Goat 2 and the signs, because all this stuff ties into one of the previous I Pet Goat 2 videos. In that scene in the classroom where she got the white rabbit behind her on the wall, and he's got the bullet hole next to his upper right ear. And then he's sitting there for like a minute before the shot happens, pointing up at the screen, and you got this guy perfectly placed in the crowd. I think his name's like Isaac Cappy or something like that. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. But he was a big thing that all the Q people back in the day, it was part of the big Q conspiracy. It's like, this guy is actually JFK Jr. in disguise. And that day, at that assassination attempt, he just magically happened to be in the right place, sitting in the stand, so that when Trump's pointing from the viewpoint of looking at the screen, he's pointing like literally like right at his nose for like 30 seconds. It's the same guy. And then when bullets start flying, like nobody moved. Like you didn't see the real panic in anything. It just didn't look freaking real. And that was my instinct. That was my gut reading of what I'm like. I was looking at it, but it was so weird to look at it. It just didn't feel real. It wasn't like surreal, like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I mean, it didn't look real. It looked like a stage act. It really freaking did. And then all this, and then it just became like, who staged it? Both sides pointing at each other. The only way that works is if behind the scenes, like we said, it's all one thing. It's meant to mislead people. But what I think it might have been, based on some of the things that we've seen today, is like a dress rehearsal or like a pre-ritual for something bigger that's yet to come. But first, you have to set him up. I am not saying that I know any of this. I'm reading the tea leaves that are in front of me. That's all that I'm doing. Okay? So that if things get freaking crazy, we're not taken by surprise and we're not sucked into the story that we are learning to step out of. That's important. You step out of the story, you focus on spirit, you get sealed. That which takes care of me takes care of everybody. But if you choose to play in the story, you're going to get sucked into it. And we don't want to do that. But let's go back to the other one for a moment. How freaking nuts is it that 2 stars in the Andromeda constellation, which is a key player in the Clash of the Titans saga, which is how this all began, and that came from Sophia, direct. Not from anywhere else, not from any YouTube video, nothing. I didn't even know what it was about at first. But within the Andromeda constellation are 2 stars that, when they have like different variations of the names, but these 2 names, you read them backwards, it says Kamala freaking Harris, Andromeda, who is the sacrifice for the Kraken, which is the beast out of the sea.
I'm going to release the Kraken.
Run.
So then you got the correlation between Clash of the Titans and Revelation. And because I'm not that up and up remembering like the different beasts and stuff like that, I just asked ChatGPT and I said, which beast was it that had the wounded head? And it said the beast out of the sea. Of course. But he was restored. But again, I don't think that that is the thing. I think the assassination attempt thing that happened in July was like a dress rehearsal. But I think somehow tying into this, they're going to throw the other one under the bus. And that's going to be like some sort of powder keg. They're that right there, all the stuff that we're looking at right now, plus what I said earlier, they know she's stupid. They know she's stupid. And you can't say she's not. You can't listen to her and say she's not. And she wasn't even like elected by anybody. They just put her in there. No, they're staking her out like the goat in Jurassic Park for some reason. And it could be there'll be something that happens to her and they blame it on a Trump or something like that. I don't know, but it ain't looking good. It ain't looking good when you're named after a constellation as a sacrifice in Clash of the Titans with all this other Clash of the Titans stuff going on. No, and the scariest thing about that I think I started to say earlier, but I didn't finish my thought, is like they don't like to give up power. So the only logical explanation that I can come up with for why they would let her do that. See, they could have, even if they knew, okay, obviously they knew Joe Biden's lost his marbles, but they could have had some sort of emergency like Democratic primary. They could have got a lot of other people in there that would have talked better than her. And when they've amassed all this power, why would they risk it by letting her run? Unless it's simply part of the bigger plan, in which the plan states that Donald Trump becomes the next president. So why would they want that? That's where it really gets interesting. So it does seem to be like, you know, this particular sequence of events in different names and cultures is like the sequence of events that plays out in the story at the end of the age for this particular soul class or whatever. It's like a reusable story. And in it, you have to have this, allegedly, this world leader. Like I said earlier, I don't see it being that clear in the Bible, but that's the story everybody's going with. So you've got enough collective agreement that it still takes effect. So you got to have like this world leader that everybody follows. And Trump's like the only person that actually fits that bill. Who else could that be? I mean, he even talks all the time. He's like, you know, whatever, he tells Putin not to mess around. He doesn't mess around. He tells Kim Jong-un not to mess around. He doesn't mess around. He tells Xi Jinping not to mess around. He doesn't mess around. Like, everyone does what he says. I'm like, isn't that kind of weird? Like, whatever he tells people to do, they do. It's like, it's kind of like, the whole, like, let's take it from him last time was just to send him up as the returning conquering hero this time, so he could be elevated to a higher status. But basically the story goes with this beast. Maybe it's not the Antichrist, maybe it's the beast. But they talk, and it's hard to disseminate between listening to religious people tell the story and what's actually written. But basically, it's like, he gets this fatal wound on his head. That's why I said it was like a pre-stage act. He gets a fatal means he dies, wound in his head, but then he is somehow miraculously recovered. And then everybody falls in wonder and follows him, like, oh my God. They'll probably say, see, it's proof that Christ or Jesus or God is behind him. We must follow him. The problem with this typical Christian end time scenario that they don't seem to have an answer for whenever I press them about it is like, where in your story does it have like a massive, powerful world leader that's on Team Jesus? That's not in your book anywhere. The only thing that is in your story is like a massively powerful world leader that fools everybody because, ta-da, he's actually going to be the bad guy. It doesn't mean he's not fooling the left. He's got to fool the right. The people that think they can't be fooled.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Like, that's your story, not mine. That's your story. There's no Donald Trump character in your story that's like, and Donald Trump is going to fight against the Antichrist. Make that make sense for me. Okay? It doesn't compute. You're trying to run two different freaking stories right now. It should be like dead in your face. And the reason you can't accept it is because he isn't that yet. That's the only way you can really get fooled good, is because he's actually genuinely who he says that he is right now. That's the crazy part. He actually is who he says he is right now. He's not the bad guy. But this stage play that the world does, that we're stuck in, is a cult up one side and down the other. And there is no freaking one perfect way. The way I kind of see it is kind of like a lot of this occult stuff is simply spiritual mechanics used different ways by good and bad. Because some of the stuff that they talk about, like you'll see here in a bit, like, oh, this is how they do it. This, and this is all bad. I'm like, the good side uses that too. You just don't know about it because your authority took it out of the freaking book. But I know, because how do you think I completed it? And she is who she says she is. Like, that's how I don't have the negative thing in my mind anymore. I can strip it out of other people. I can exercise people. Things that are negative, stay the hell away from me. And people that wear my stuff. I wouldn't even be anywhere near Christ or Gnostic Christ or Sophia if she hadn't shown up and revealed herself. Like, she is what she actually says she is. But there is a lot of stuff that's in the tarot cards and things like that. Like, it's just how you put two things together. How do you actually marry them together? So it just depends on who you're listening to. That's why you have to get all your information straight from spirit and not go by books or what any experts say or whatever, but they'll say all sorts of stuff either which way. So let's just assume, because we got to figure out why Kamala's being set up the way she is with all this symbology. And I'm thinking something will happen to her. That's because they need to light the fuse. They need to set the left off. Then they also need to set the right off. And what popped into my head was that documentary. It was called Belly of the Beast, and it's all about like the esoteric occult stuff around the United States and Washington D.C. and the buildings and all that stuff. The only person I can remember in it is Tom Horn, who's kind of like a more esoteric Christian author. Sorry, cat's giving me the eye in the window, like, let me in, let me in. Cat's like that preacher from Poltergeist 2.
Let me in. Let me in.
Daddy?
Now, before it's too late.
Just staring at me. Let me in. Be right back. So I'm going to show you 2 clips from this video, which will probably explain it better than I can. But within like the Masonic, esoteric crap that they do, there is a direct correlate. It's almost like there's like a good copy and a bad copy of everything. Like Christ, his symbol's the sun. But they also like follow Horus, who's also the sun, and Ra. It's like, which is which? It's like, no. So I go by what I learned internally, following the Gnostic Christian Gospels and what she teaches me directly. But that's the problem when you deal with the world and all its source material. Like, you just don't know. That's her big lesson. You don't know, so don't read things and assume it to be. You'll get lost that way. But they follow all this Apollo stuff, and Apollo is a stone's throw away from Apollyon. And Apollyon is also known as Abaddon. So Apollyon Abaddon is actually the real big bad. See, there is no devil the way Christians talk about the devil. It's something completely different. But the closest thing to the devil, the way Christians think about the devil, is Abaddon. And Abaddon comes out, I want to say it's the 5th trumpet, when they open up the key to the abyss and all the freaking demon locust hordes come out, and the king over them was Abaddon, which is also known as Apollyon, which connects to Apollo. And there's all sorts of weird stuff about that. If you've been in the esoteric woo-woo occult range for a while, you might remember, I don't remember how far back it was. It had to have been somewhere around like maybe 2008, 2009. I think it is, going off the top of my head here. Is it called the Burn Tunnel? Like over in Europe, like a stone's throw away from CERN, which I believe was built on the site of an ancient temple to Apollo. They've got this crazy tunnel that they drilled through a mountain. And they had all these world leaders there for this big freaking crazy ceremony for opening this tunnel. And if you can find the videos of that, that is some of the craziest shit you'll ever see in your life. It's like a 2-day freaking weird-ass devil occult freaking ceremony. It is nuts. Freaking nuts. So yeah, there's all this stuff is like a stone's throw away from each other. But what they're going to show you in this these clips from this documentary is a lot of the stuff of the architecture in the U.S. Capitol, which is copied from Rome, which is copied from Egypt. It's like this whole setup thing for like pharaohs to go into and hopefully get elevated to God status or something like that. It's like they talk about this ritual they do the Scottish Freemasons do at the time that presidents are getting inaugurated, hoping that they will become indwelt by the return of Apollo. But there's some more to it also, and this is where I think you could overlap the scriptures about the beast taking a fatal headshot and then being magically resurrected, and all the other stuff that we talked about could possibly be overlapped into this story. So let's watch these two clips from this documentary called Belly of the Beast.
7 kings, 5 are fallen and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. Each of the 7 kings have a kingdom associated with them.
Daniel gives us 4 kingdoms. The 2 prior world kingdoms that took place before the time of his prophecy were Egypt and Assyria, which makes Rome the 6th kingdom of the 7 mentioned in Revelation 17. This kingdom was currently in power when the revelation was given to John. Rome was a political, religious superpower of that day. Rome had the spirit of Antichrist, which is also known as the spirit of Babylon. You see, they were persecuting the people of God and leading the culture into spiritual fornication through idolatry. Peter confirms this idea in his epistles when he writes them from the church at Babylon while actually being in Rome. This was a replay of the past Babylonian system while foreshadowing the final system to come, all maintaining that great horse spirit of Babylon.
Now the king that is yet to come is the one that will rule the prophesied 7th and final kingdom. This king will die by the sword according to Revelation 13. Simply put, this king will be assassinated and his death will be mourned worldwide. We're talking about a world political leader who has amassed unprecedented works in globalization and peace. One who has labored in bringing about change and breaking down the walls of political and religious division. So yes, when he is assassinated, the world will mourn his death. But then, in a miraculous resurrection back to life, he will be reanimated by the entity that ascends out of the bottomless pit. Revelation 17:8 explains this as the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. So he was alive, then dead, then alive again. It's through this supernatural resurrection, when the entity from the bottomless pit possesses this 7th king's dead body, that he becomes the 8th and final king, known as the Antichrist. This kingdom of the Antichrist is being built and revived today, with the majority of its policies in force being legislated and framed in our very own Washington, D.C.
How many people know that a tomb for the resurrection of Antichrist has already been prepared for his raising, and it lies beneath the U.S. Capitol dome? The United States Capitol crypt, it's a large circular room filled with 40 neoclassical Doric columns directly beneath the United States Capitol rotunda. As all mystic rabbis and Freemasons understand, the number 40 has great significance throughout the Torah, the Talmud, the mystery schools, because the number 40 represents transition or change, the concept of renewal, a new beginning. Rabbis say the number 40 has the power to lift the world into a new spiritual state. So consider how Noah's flood represented the end of one age and the birth of a new one, and it lasted for 40 days. Moses was on Mount Sinai for 40 days and came down with the stone tablets that set the rules for a new order. But according to Mackey's authoritative Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, 40 is the number of days of mourning in Assyria, Phoenicia, and Egypt to commemorate the death and the burial of their sun god, as well as the period in the festivals of the resurrection of Osiris. So consider that the U.S. Capitol crypt was built originally to offer a secret entrance to a coffer that they call Washington's tomb, that's stationed next to a repository of 13 statues of the National Statuary Hall collection. Of course, the number 13 is not coincidental. It's sacred to Freemasons as the number of Osiris and his future resurrection. Revelation 13:3 describes the head of the beast being wounded unto death. Then the whole world marvels when the beast is healed and rises from the dead. In this mockery of the death and resurrection of Christ, I suggest that the most fitting place on earth For the Antichrist body to lie in state will be in the tomb of Washington beneath the floor of the Capitol dome. Why? Because the rotunda of the dome is where deceased presidents, celebrated commanding officers, even celebrated private citizens, like recently the Reverend Billy Graham, lay in state beneath the magic 72 pentagrams and the apotheosis of George Washington, America's first Osiris, to be translated into the kingdom of Osiris. But until now, nobody has laid directly beneath the rotunda in the Capitol crypt that was, according to authoritative Freemasons, prepared for America's Osiris. There is therefore no other more appropriate place for a United States president or a celebrated global leader to be placed for viewing. It was prepared and has been in waiting specifically for the magic ceremony that will give rise to the beast of Revelation. On his death, Antichrist will be placed in this magic coffer designed by Freemasons, and the 33rd degree Scottish Rite members will come there to perform the raising ceremony. Through Masonic alchemy, presidential apotheosis, that is, the leader of the United States, America's Pharaoh, being transformed into a god within the Capitol dome or the womb of Isis in sight of the obelisk of Osiris, or the Washington Monument to those who Masons call profane, the uninitiated, actually began with America's first and most revered president, Master Freemason George Washington. In fact, Masons in attendance at Washington's funeral in 1799 cast sprigs of acacia or evergreen to symbolize both Osiris's resurrection and Washington's imminent resurrection in the realm where Osiris presides. Now, according to this Masonic enchantment, Osiris, Horus, was rising within a new president in D.C. as Washington took his role as Osiris of the underworld. Now, that's further assimilated and symbolized by the three-story design of the Capitol building. Freemasons point out how the Great Pyramid of Giza was made up of three main chambers to facilitate Pharaoh's transference to Osiris, just as the Temple of Solomon was a three-sectioned tabernacle made up of the ground floor, the middle chamber, and the Holy of Holies. The U.S. Capitol building is therefore designed with three stories: Washington's tomb, the crypt, and the rotunda, capped by a dome. Each floor has significant esoteric meaning regarding apotheosis, and the so-called tomb of Washington is empty, has been since construction. So we have to ask ourselves, why didn't they just clear this area out and use it if Washington was its intended corpse but refused to use the facility? The official narrative is that a legal issue kept the government from placing Washington's body there. However, just as the tomb of Jesus Christ was emptied before his ascension, Washington is not in his tomb because he was never meant to be. He was the forerunner, the John the Baptist sent to prepare the way for a Messiah, while he himself traveled to the home of Osiris, as depicted high overhead in the dome, in the womb of Isis, in the apotheosis of George Washington. How important, by the way, was this story where Isis creates a magical obelisk to replace the missing part of Osiris's epiphallic corpse, right? She sits on, to be blunt, the obelisk on the corpse of her dead husband brother, and Isis fashions the very first ever raising of Osiris enchantment ceremony, in which she calls forth the seed of her dead husband from up out of the underworld. It magically emits from the obelisk into her womb, and Isis becomes ever pregnant because she is constantly giving birth over and over again to the dying and rising God. Now, so important was that mythology, by the way, that it formed the center of the cosmology of all of ancient Egyptian magic, and then later into the mystery schools, Rosicrucianism, the Freemasons, right? So important was it that at the inauguration of every pharaoh who would take his role as the king of Egypt, during a festival called Opet, they would put the pharaoh on a barge and they would pull him up the Nile River. As he was on the Nile River, the laity of Egypt are walking along both sides of the river, right? And they're replaying the myth of Osiris and Isis. They take him to the largest religious complex ever built, the temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak, where he gets off the barge and he walks into the domed belly of Isis, the temple of Isis. And as he is standing in that domed building, looking out into the mall, into the courtyard where the obelisk is erect, and the masturbatory sun god Ra has rose up into the air so its heat can fall upon the obelisk to excite it, right? Inside the belly of Isis, the magicians of Egypt, and we know these guys had significant occult power, because when Moses goes down to face the Pharaoh to say, "Let my people go," they actually were able to recreate almost all of the miracles that God performed, as Moses is standing there with his shaft. So we know these guys had supernatural power. They recite the original raising of Osiris ceremony while the Pharaoh is standing inside of the dome. We don't know what exactly the language around that is, but we know it was preserved in the mystery schools. And across town from where we're standing right now at the Hera Dome, they claim that they continue to have this important language, the spells, the incantation for the raising of Osiris. Well, they would conduct that ceremony while the Pharaoh is standing there. The seed of Osiris would be drawn up from out of the underworld through the testes of the obelisk. It would magically emit into the ever-pregnant belly of Isis, and Pharaoh would become transmogrified. He entered into the building a man, he comes out of the building, he is a god. And all of Egypt celebrates because now they have divine representation. Now fast forward to this present day. The Freemasons openly admit that the obelisk, the dome, well, again, it's on the Library of Congress website. These are structures designed and dedicated to all of the ancient pagan gods. But how many Americans know that at the inauguration of every American president, while he is standing over here in the dome, the pregnant belly of Isis, looking out across the mall at the obelisk over here in the distance, that across town at the Hera Dome, the headquarters of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry 33rd degree, they are conducting the raising of Osiris ceremony in anticipation of the day that literally the spirit of Osiris, or who the Greeks would call Apollo, is going to rise up out of the underworld to become incarnate in a future American president who will take his rightful place according to the prophecy on the Great Seal of the United States, which both Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his Vice President Henry Wallace wrote about. Wallace wrote about it in his biography, that he convinced Roosevelt, I think he was trying to take credit, but that he convinced Roosevelt that the prophecy on the Great Seal of the United States, the Novus Ordo Seclorum, was a Masonic prophecy pointing to a day in the future when the United States would rise up to take its rightful place as the capital of the New World Order, the fulfillment of the Sibylline prophecy that says, what? That Apollo is going to rise up from out of the underworld, take his place in a man, and give birth to a new golden pagan age. Literally, the generator to make that happen is what we are standing in the middle of today doing this recording. And if you go inside the Capitol Dome and look up into the underside of the pregnant belly of Isis, what do you see? The apotheosis of George Washington. Literally, apotheosis means to become a god. And what god is George Washington becoming? Walt Whitman, the famous American poet that is so connected to American history, said he's becoming the Osiris.
So, hypothetical, theoretical model. Let's say, for instance, Donald Trump wins, and then they do away with Kamala Andromeda Harris and blame it on a Trump supporter. And then Trump is getting inaugurated, and then they've got their pre-planned lefties losing it, revenge killing, and they pop him in front of the Capitol building. So then they hurriedly cart their body down to that little crypt or whatever that they showed you in those clips, and they do all the weird Mason crap or whatever, and then boom, he gets indwelt by the thing and comes back out, and everyone cheers because he did it again. He cheated death again. But now he's the false prophet and the beast. No one ever really considered that they could actually be the same thing. That the false prophet would be like the outer self, and the beast is actually what's driving the car, because that would make sense, being that he's been so openly praising Jesus and stuff during the campaign, which no politician ever does. Like over the top. Could be the same person. We don't know. Like, he's like, this is like a guy that was freaking blasted on shrooms 2,000 years ago, scribbling notes in a cave. Like, can we just accept the fact that it might not be absolutely perfectly clear? But it is a script. It's a script for the story that we appear to be in. And it's not to get worked up about it, but it's just like she wants us to look at this for some reason, while not losing sight of what we've taught in the last week or so, which is learn to let go, learn to let go. But if it's going to get crazy, she's going to give you a heads up so you don't get sucked into it. And then you're like, oh, the stage play is happening now, just like she told us it would. I don't need to get sucked into this emotion, because as soon as you do, you're not going to pull anybody out of that. That's like a maelstrom. It's going to be absolutely freaking nuts. Everybody that is already connected to spirit is going to shut themselves off from everybody, because everybody is going to be nuts. Doesn't matter what side they're on, left or right, they're all going to be nuts. And if you come into their sphere saying anything except what they want to hear, it's going to be bad news. But yeah, I mean, and all this stuff fits with, things I've said all along, with that's been perfectly clear. I mean, iPad Goat 2 is centered around the United States falling. Revelations talks about the fall of Mystery Babylon, and yeah, this is Mystery Babylon. It always has been. Look at the clips you just freaking saw. I mean, that's I think it's like a 2-hour documentary. But yeah, everyone's like, oh, this is the country of Jesus. No, it never was. So that's what they told you. They say God, and you're like, oh yeah, God. They don't ever tell you what God they're talking about. Ever think about that? They don't ever clarify that for you. But yeah, it's I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it all. It's like I wasn't even on this wavelength this morning when she dropped this, because that was a lot of work and a lot of clues that she led us through for a couple months, that those stories didn't go anywhere. There was no conclusion to them, but they were really freaking obvious. But I did say that I felt like, yeah, things would get interesting around the time of the election. So maybe we just had to wait and pause for a minute. The other thing that's interesting about that is, let's say, for instance, well, no, that wouldn't be it. Could be a precursor, though. So just the synchronicities and coincidences of the clips that I pulled, like the Hades from Clash of the Titans. In 10 days, I will release the Kraken.
I'm going to release the Kraken.
Well, I'm looking at, she showed me this, and I'm looking at it today. So I'm like, what is in 10 days? 10 days is the day after Election Day, which we can't expect them to call it on election night. But if it is the way it seems to be that we're describing in this video, that they actually want him in there because it's part of the story, then they're not going to dilly-dally around. They probably would announce it the day after Election Day. And then between Election Day and Inauguration Day, Kamala Harris better grow eyes in the back of her head. That's my feeling. That's my feeling. It just feels like she's being set up for something, to be the goat in the T-Rex pen. And then we would watch the real fireworks, would be like Inauguration Day. If this theoretical model pans out, if it pans out. These are just all the pieces that came together today, and I'm trying to sort them out into a clear and cohesive picture the best that I can. Where my anchor point is like, I'm not getting caught up in this. So for instance, I remember what I've already been taught. Like, sit back and enjoy the show. Watch the show. You're taken care of. You're taken care of. You're sealed. You've actually completed the game. And a lot of the other people we work with are sealed. They don't need to worry either. Just don't get sucked into it when whatever happens, happens. But anyway, it was my hope that all that stuff would just kind of like fade out and we would sail off into the sunset. But if this place is built for the experience that I believe it's made for, it just would not make sense not to have a conclusion to the story. It doesn't fit the narrative for, like, magic president to swoop in and save the day and make everything great again. When everything, like, this is one guy against a world system. It's one guy. And as I said the first time, nobody sits in that office that they don't want to sit in there. They play the long game. They play the long game. And one of the reasons why they would attack him so mercilessly for 8 years is so you see him as your savior. They've been fooling people for the entirety of human history. Humans are gullible. They're easy to fool, especially if they have no spiritual awareness. So don't. And it's like the whole Illuminati thing. There's other things that run things. You can't get a bunch of old rich guys to come together and hatch some mastermind plan and all agree and work towards it when it's going to take beyond their lifetimes to accomplish it, unless something else is running the show, which I believe to be, the Gnostic demiurge, which is essentially like for all intents and purposes, a supernatural quantum AI god, so to speak, kind of like the master control system that they showed you in Tron. That's what's creating all these plans. That's what's giving the orders. They're just executing them. And they follow the rules, they execute them, and they get to reap the benefits. That's how it works. But they don't let people sit in that freaking office, in that chair, just because, a bunch of rednecks got together and won the Electoral College. No, if they didn't want him there, they could make him go away. They could. This is the same trap that regular Judeo-Christianity gives you, the external savior. Gnostics know it differently. We find Christ within. We find the Spirit of truth within. We find Sophia, wisdom, within. And it teaches us from within, and it takes us away from the world. What authoritarian religion, which killed off all the Gnostics and tortured people for 1,000 years, a little bit of inconvenient history that you cannot escape. They want you to believe that Jesus is going to come in. He's going to jump out. He's going to halo jump out of a freaking plane in a parachute and swoop down and save you at the last minute. It's not how it works. Yeah, there might at the last thing, when everything gets torn up by Christ and Sophia, because it's both of them that tear the place down, that's one thing. But you're supposed to do what he told you to do. Problem is, they took away a lot of those books. So you only know what they let you read. And if you're one of them, you're too scared to read anything else because they taught you if you go off script, the devil's going to deceive you. You're deceived. I don't have a freaking middleman. What are you talking about? I get my info straight from the tap. You get your info from Pastor Bob sitting up there sweating. He read freaking 3 verses out of a freaking book and then babbled on for 45 freaking minutes about what he thinks it means. And then he's going to tell you how to interpret that book that they compiled themselves back in the 3rd century. And they took all the characters that make it work out. So, yeah, you're not going to win that argument. That's a great thing about debating people is like, if they get out of hand, she immediately steps in and it's like, I got Kamala Harris's freaking debate earrings on. And Sophia's just like, use this, use that, paint them into a corner. And then they're faced with the fact that, yeah, this is crazy what I'm saying. But man, oh man, what a freaking crazy day. The upside to it is, oh, there was one thing where I forget where we were looking at, but I was looking at that clip with the apple rolls in iPet Goat 2, and it said there's the thing on the floor that I never quite decoded because like one thing's backwards. It's like, what is that supposed to be? L7, C7, something. So I got to thinking, see, I'm like, could it be chapter 7? So I looked to see what chapter 7 in Revelation was, and that is the 5th seal. That's the people getting sealed. That's like the, or the 144,000 or something like that. Like, you're sealed. You're sealed, they can't mess with you. Just like when they unleash the hell hornets, like they can't mess with the sealed people. I know I'm sealed. I know a lot of people we've worked with is sealed. I'm not worried about that. So that was kind of like a little reminder she threw in there. It's like, don't worry about it. Don't worry. I'm showing you this so you're not shocked when the story inevitably, finally gets to the finale. It's not going to just go away. You know, Santa Claus, Donald Trump, the magic freaking Gandalf wizard is not going to get in there and make the whole world better. He's one guy. They're playing a game. It's a trap. They're fooling you. Doesn't mean he's a bad guy right now. I don't believe he is. I don't believe he is. I believe he is actually everything that his supporters believe that he is right now. But something's going to happen. Something's going to change because he's simply a character in this stage play, in this reality that you're currently existing in. He is part of the story. His freaking name's Trump. Where's trumpets come in? Ringing any bells? So I don't know. But we're telling you this so you've seen some things. I mean, come on. Kamala Harris is in that freaking constellation. That's nuts. And that directly ties to how that was Sophia's clue. That was the clue that tied everything together. Didn't come from anywhere else but her. Just one day she's like, watch all the Clash of Titans movie. Why? Just do it. And then within a week, it started becoming relevant. And it continues to be relevant. All these signs, symbol. You know, we're in the season of Scorpio right now. It's when all this stuff happens. Scorpio's ruling planet is Pluto. Pluto is also Hades. Got Hades and those giant scorpions in Clash of the Titans. The scorpion is literally at the end of freaking iPet Goat 2. Not only is the scorpion at the end of iPet Goat 2, but the sun's putting off all these freaking waves. And what's going on right now? The sun is going batshit freaking crazy. That X9 flare hit us and we all went like, whoa, what the hell just happened? So it's all lining up. In the silver lining is we've got the real deal here that's telling us about it, that's preparing us for it, that's giving us tools to use, that's helping us seal people and help people and do all this kind of stuff. She's the real deal. She's the real thing that came from Team Christ in the Nag Hammadi. You only got glimpses of her in the Bible, but you don't have the context. You don't realize, like, especially in the New Testament, when they're saying all this stuff about love and God's love and all that stuff, is actually talking about woman, because that's what she is. You know, the treasure, the pearl, the parable. I mean, there's a lot more of them in the Nag Hammadi, but they're in the regular Bible too. And then all the time when I bring that stuff up in the Christians that only have the coloring book, you know, Cliff's Notes version of it, start screaming at me. There is no divine feminine. I mean, you're the one that tells me like the Bible is like ineffable, right? If it's in the Bible. Okay, well, you know, that's her. The book of Proverbs is about Sophia. Sophia is the Greek word for wisdom. It's talking about her. It's also, and I really like the part, I don't know the verses off the top of my head, where she talks about all the scoffers and the nasty people. And she's like, you know what? Time's going to come when you're going to realize that you effed up. And on that day, you're going to be like, I'm sorry. And you know what? I got my AirPods in. I can't hear you. Now let me just drop this giant freaking rock on your planet. Smart ass. Yeah, people don't realize that's the best part about, you know, the end of the story is it's Christ and Sophia that are just tearing this place to shreds. First they evacuate everybody. Everyone asks, well, rapture, when does it happen? I don't understand why y'all argue about that. Like, it's freaking plain as day. It's in there. I mean, can you not read? Or you don't like the answer, so you try to make it think that it's something else. Well, it says that we're not appointed to God's wrath, therefore we wouldn't see the tribulation. Wrath is the bowl judgments. You won't see the bowl judgments. So the last trumpet overlaps another verse in Revelations. That's when the angel comes out with the scythe to harvest, you know, the crops. That's the rapture. Then the second angel comes out to harvest the grapes and throw them on the winepress of God's wrath. Okay, the rapture is not a freaking mystery. It happens at the end of the trumpets. So why are you arguing? I mean, it's funny. Like sometimes, like if you just simply tune out the world and all the experts and everything, and just do it yourself and read it, it becomes really clear. Even more so if you're actually tapped into the spirit of truth, and she can help you. But in the meantime, I'm hoping there's no more brain bombs. I don't want to do like the Doom Show. Like we did the Doom Show. Yeah, the Doom Show brings in viewers, but the viewers that it brings in don't give two shits about connecting to spirit most of the times. I see the analytics. That's what we're here for. I don't know if it's just like ego mind, that it's just like weirdly obsessed with their own demise. I don't know what it is. But like I could do a video, be like, I'm going to do a video that's 1,000 horrible possibilities about the way you might die. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. And people be like, oh yeah, give me some more of that. And everybody like, there is a perfect being of love and light within you that will change your life. And it's like the greatest thing you could ever find in this lifetime. Nah, I don't care about that. Okay. That's what we're focusing on. We're focusing on winning the game, getting out of here. peacefully, detaching from this nonsense before it gets torn down. Not just sit there and like fantasize about how many different ways aliens are going to freaking kill us or whatever. Don't care about any of that. And who knows? We don't know what we don't know. That's the beauty of what she teaches. It's because it's true. All these things are just stories. And these stories could simply be there because they are the mechanism by which we change. It's like they said in the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, the crappy remake, not the original black and white one. The professor guy is explaining to Keanu Reeves, the alien. It's like, you know, only when you're standing at the brink of annihilation do you find the courage to change, to evolve. It's like, well, that's where we are. Don't take this from us. That's why you got to get to these points. That's why it gets so hard, is because that's what makes you change. That's what makes you evolve. That's what makes you realize on a spiritual soul level that you are not your name, you're not your body. This world isn't freaking real. This bullshit, this story isn't you. And you're like, I don't want this anymore. And you turn away from the world, the way Christ advised you to do, and you find spirit within you that's been standing there with you the entire freaking time. But you're too busy watching freaking Netflix and fighting with people on Twitter to notice her. And then you can fix yourself and get out of here. Anyway, that's enough for right now. I gotta draw a line in the sand somewhere. So we're gonna stop that there. If you want to get in touch with this, pick up any of the new energy pendants, do any of the work. I should have my oil bottles tomorrow. I'm hoping. There was some sort of screw job. There's been a lot of this lately. It's going around. It's like my package made it to Columbus and then it like got shipped somewhere else. So hopefully it circles back around and gets back to me tomorrow so we can do like the oils too. The oils are the alternative to the pendants. They work slightly different. Some people prefer the oils. Some people prefer the pendants. But, you know, we can do a lot of stuff with this stuff. Like I've actually done it. I've actually passed the courses. I know what I'm doing. I've got the real thing. It's not bullshit. And if you have any questions, you can reach us through there as well. If you're on Facebook, you want to get in touch with me, that's my Facebook profile for this channel. It's easy to spot because I got Lumen on the background. But other than that, got any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Chris and Lumen, see you next time.